My 4-year-old couldn't wait for anything. She'd have a complete meltdown if I asked her to wait 30 seconds while I finished something. Then I watched a Japanese mother use a 5-second technique at a playground, and what happened next absolutely amazed me. Her child, who had been begging to go on the swing, stopped whining, took a breath, and waited calmly for several minutes. I asked her what she did, and she taught me this simple method that's being used in Japan for generations. I tried it that same afternoon, and by the end of the week, my daughter was waiting patiently in situations that would have caused massive tantrums before. This isn't about suppressing emotions or creating robotic children. It's about teaching the actual brain skill of patience in a way that works with child development, not against it. If your child struggles with patience and you're tired of the constant "I want it now" meltdowns, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because this 5-second Japanese method is going to transform those frustrating moments starting today. Let me explain exactly what this method is, why it works so powerfully, and how you can start using it immediately. The technique is called ma, which in Japanese means pause or space. It's the practice of creating intentional pauses throughout daily life, teaching children that waiting and empty space are natural and valuable parts of living. But it's not just asking your child to wait. It's a specific 5-second practice that trains their brain to tolerate and even appreciate delay. Here's how it works. When your child wants something and you need them to wait, instead of saying just a minute or hold on while you continue what you're doing, you stop what you're doing completely. You turn to your child, make eye contact, and you count slowly together out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. During those 5 seconds, you're both just breathing and being present. Then you acknowledge their request. "Thank you for waiting. Now let me finish this, and then I'll help you." This entire interaction takes maybe 10 seconds total, but the impact is profound. The reason this works is rooted in neuroscience. When a young child wants something, their brain is flooded with desire and urgency. From their perspective, waiting feels impossible because they don't yet have a developed prefrontal cortex that can regulate those impulses. But when you do the 5-second pause together, several things happen in their brain. First, the act of counting gives their mind something to focus on besides the wanting. Second, your calm presence and the structured counting activate their vagus nerve, which helps regulate their stress response. Third, you're teaching their brain that waiting has a beginning and an end. It's not endless torture. And fourth, by acknowledging them after the pause, you're showing that waiting doesn't mean being ignored. If you want strategies that work with how kids' brains actually develop, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because we share research-backed methods that create real lasting change. Let me give you concrete examples of how I use this throughout the day. My daughter wants a snack while I'm in the middle of making dinner. Old me would have said "not right now" while continuing to chop vegetables, which would escalate into whining and eventually a meltdown because she felt ignored. New me stops chopping, turns to her, and says, "Let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I say, "Thank you for waiting with me. I need about 5 more minutes to finish cooking, and then we'll eat together. Would you like to help me set the table while you wait?" The 5-second pause gave her my attention, regulated her nervous system, and created space for her to accept the delay. Another example. We're in the car and my son asks when we'll be there. Instead of saying soon or getting frustrated by the repeated question, I say, "Let's take 5 calm breaths together." We count slowly, breathing deeply. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I say, "We'll be there in about 10 minutes. That's 2 songs on the radio. The counting pause gives him something to do with his impatience and helps him regulate. Here's what's beautiful about this method. You're not just managing the moment. You're actually building their brain's capacity for patience. Every time you practice the 5-second pause, you're strengthening the neural pathways between their emotional center and their prefrontal cortex. You're teaching them that the feeling of wanting something doesn't have to immediately lead to getting it or falling apart. There can be space, a pause between desire and action. That's literally the skill of patience being built, one 5-second pause at a time. Drop a comment right now and tell me, how patient are your kids on a scale of 1 to 10? I want to know where you're starting from. Now, let me share what happened in my household after using this method consistently for a month. The whining decreased dramatically because my kids felt heard and acknowledged, even when I couldn't immediately give them what they wanted. The tantrums over waiting were reduced by at least 70%. But the most surprising change was that my kids started using the technique on their own without me prompting them. My daughter would say to herself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when she was waiting for her turn during a game. My son started taking 5 breaths when he was frustrated. They were internalizing the pause and using it as a self-regulation tool. The Japanese concept of ma goes deeper than just this 5-second technique. In Japanese culture, pauses and space are valued, not rushed to fill. They teach children from a young age that silence and waiting are not uncomfortable voids, but opportunities for awareness, reflection, and patience. Western culture tends to fill every moment, every silence, every wait with distraction or entertainment. We hand kids tablets in waiting rooms, we rush from one activity to the next, and we feel uncomfortable with space. But this constant stimulation and instant gratification are precisely what makes it so hard for kids to develop patience. When I started embracing mom more broadly in our family life, not just the 5-second pause, but also allowing quiet moments, not rushing to fill every silence, having meals without background TV, the overall atmosphere in our home became calmer. My kids became more comfortable with stillness and waiting because they weren't conditioned to need constant stimulation. Let me give you some important tips for making this 5-second method work effectively. First, consistency is crucial. You can't use it sometimes and not others and expect it to build the skill. Make it your go-to response whenever your child needs to wait. Second, the counting needs to be slow and calm, not rushed. You're modeling the patience you want them to develop. Third, always acknowledge them after the pause. Thank you for waiting. I see that your request matters. That acknowledgement is what makes the waiting feel worth it. Fourth, start using this method in low-stakes situations first. Practice it when you're not stressed and the request is simple. Once the pattern is established, it'll work in harder moments too. Fifth, and this is important, the 5-second pause is for teaching patience in everyday situations, not for emergencies or times when your child is genuinely dysregulated. If your child is having a meltdown, they need co-regulation and comfort first, not a counting exercise. Use the pause for building the skill when they're relatively calm, and it will help prevent some of those meltdowns from happening in the first place. Here's something I discovered that made this even more powerful. I started pairing the 5-second pause with teaching about the concept of gaimin, which is the Japanese value of enduring difficult things with patience and dignity. After we do our 5-second count, I might say, "You showed such gaimin waiting for me." That's a strong skill. Naming the character trait reinforced that patience wasn't just about behavior. It was about who they were becoming. My kids started taking pride in their patience instead of seeing waiting as punishment. The research on delayed gratification supports everything about this method. The famous marshmallow test showed that children who could delay gratification had better outcomes in life, better academic achievement, healthier relationships, and more success. But what's less talked about is that delayed gratification isn't just an innate trait some kids have and others don't. It's a skill that can be taught and practiced. The 5-second ma pause is exactly that practice, scaled appropriately for young children. After 6 months of using this method, I barely recognize my kids' relationship with waiting. They're not perfect, no child is, but the baseline has completely shifted. They can handle delays that would have destroyed us before. They're developing genuine patience, not forced compliance through threats or consequences. And I'm a calmer parent because I'm not constantly fighting battles over waiting. I also want to acknowledge that this method requires patience from you as the parent. It would be faster to just say wait and keep doing what you're doing. Taking 10 seconds to stop, count, and acknowledge feels like extra time you don't have in the moment. But I promise you, the time you invest now in building this skill pays off exponentially. You'll spend so much less time managing meltdowns, repeating yourself, and dealing with impatient behavior. If this 5-second Japanese method resonates with you and you can see how it would transform those I want it now moments, please share this video with another parent. This is such a simple technique, but so powerful when used consistently. Drop a comment and tell me what situations you're going to try this in first. Or if you've used something similar, share how it worked for you. And make sure you're subscribed because we're building a community of parents who learn from wisdom across cultures and apply methods that respect child development while creating calmer, more patient children. Thank you for being here and for being willing to slow down and use techniques that take a little more time up front but create kids with real-life skills. Patience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, and the 5-second pause is how you build it.